Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to ITD Game Reviews. Make sure you like, listen, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends. What's on the menu today? We skip dinner and go straight for that cookie on a rope with Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, originally released in 2017 for PC, recently re-released as Xbox, PS4, I think pretty much everything else. It is a interesting game. So let's go to Russell first and pick his brain.
And I'm surprised y'all picked me first.
Oh, this is your game, buddy.
Actually, I'm not a big fan of this game. It is interesting. Yes, it's like a good read, like a good read for a book or something like that, that you anticipate extreme things to happen. That's the best way I can put it. With that being said, I don't know that it's appropriate for a game. I'm probably going to get chastised a little bit within the group, but it is a game. You do have the choice to buy the game. It does have a ESR rating or whatever it is. It has all those ratings. It has all that stuff. I completely understand that. I just advise parents to understand what this game is before allowing your children to play it, please. Other than that, I mean, I enjoyed the game the only one time. I'm not really going to get back into it. But I'm not sure that I'm completely sold on this game. So I'm going to go ahead and just pass it over to Nick and let him, follow up with my poo-poo.
All right. Just Monika. That's all I have to say for this game. No, I loved it. It's pretty much a graphic novel in a sense. There is psychological horror in it, and the trailer doesn't do it justice. If you watch the trailer, you think, okay, this is just a graphic novel about some literature club and a bunch of girls and stuff like that. But there's a lot that goes on and a lot that happens. There's a lot of kind of a meta game with this game, and it's just a lot of is crazy stuff that goes on. So I really enjoyed it. I played it several times through. I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed like all the craziness that goes on with this game. And if you play it, or if you've played it before, you might know. But if you haven't played it yet, definitely experience it. It's not an expensive game. It is. You might watch the trailer and go, well, this doesn't look fun at all. But just trust us in saying you should definitely check it out. I really enjoyed it. It is a great game. A lot of great characters and really good writing. And I think just all in all, it's a fun game to play and experience. But Patrick, what did you think of this game?
Yep. If you're letting your kids play something that looks like a dating simulator, you're probably already failing as a parent, I would say, because it looks like that's what the game looks like, right? And as Nick said, it's more of like a visual novel, an interactive visual novel that looks like a dating simulator. So if you're letting your kids play that, you might want to question that anyway. But I thought it was very interesting. If you don't like visual novels, you're probably not going to like it because there's a lot of reading, but there's a lot of interaction outside of the actual game. It's hard to say something without giving away something, but there's all kinds of, like Nick has said, meta within the game. There's meta within the meta in this game, and you have to play it more than once to get all of what's going on. So it's pretty good. I like games like this. It's a little bit puzzly. It kind of seems straightforward. When you're first playing through it, you see it just seems like a pretty straightforward game. All I'm doing is clicking the button, reading the text, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Very little choice and decision, but that's just like the very surface layer of the game. There's so much more beneath that, and you have to play it and you have to get all the unlocks and do all that kind of stuff. So I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit and played it a couple of times as well, just to try to get the different endings. So Shane, what do you think about this one, man?
I love this game. We originally picked this game to review as just a little joke between the group, and I believe it was Nick who read a little bit more into it about the game, and he told us about it, and it's like, you know what, let's really do it. We did. So we picked this game to review, and Surprisingly, I love this game. I love everything about this game. There's certain things I would like to see, done differently in very minimal ways, but love the game. Like Pat said, it's really just it's about reading, waiting for that next to hit, that little drop of the shoe, like he said, and it's hard to review this game without giving up too much, because this game really is a game you want to discuss in detail with your friends that have played it. And as far as what Russ said about the don't let your kids play, absolutely. My niece Cheska, she's 20, 21, big anime fan. This is definitely appropriate for her. She's old enough, she's smart enough, and I definitely recommend it to her. Hi, Cheska. And then my daughter Jasmine, who's 13. Now, she's on the cusp of what I would consider old enough to play it. It depends on your maturity level. It depends on a lot of things, but she's old enough to play it. She sat and watched me play it, the entire thing. I was sick one day, so for 9 hours straight, I laid in my bed playing this thing. She sat right there with me the entire time. She'd already watched some stuff on it because the original version released back in 2017, like we said. But the game is definitely at a mature level, like Nick said, psychological horror. The trailer does not do it justice, because when we first saw it, it looked like some, little dating sim with some little cute Japanese girls, and like, oh, okie dokie. But it's not what you think, and that's what makes the game great. It's the more you play it, the more the mind games of the game works, and that's what makes it great. Normally, I don't think I would ever sit and read this freaking much in a game, because I don't pick up manuals and stuff in Resident Evil and read that crap. Just don't do it. But this game, that's what it's about, and it works well. The writing is fantastic, in my opinion. I think the story was fantastic. You, big anime fans like myself, Pat, and Nick, I could hear the voices of the characters. Who I have seen, in shows. I can hear their voices when I read the script, when I read the text. So that's just one of the things I absolutely love about it. Nick was the first to beat it. I was second. Now, Russ, since you were last to beat it, and we tried not to spoil anything for you, what did you think? Because I know you said a few things in our little text group. What did you think from the very beginning to the end? I mean, were you surprised at the game as far as the way the story took place? Were you like completely
because I was kind of surprised, taken off guard by being called in first. Usually, for those listeners who don't know, we do kind of a Russian roulette in the mornings, or I should say in the very beginning of the podcast. And so sometimes we don't know who get picked. So let me clarify a little bit. The game itself and the story is very intriguing. It is very well written. It is very interesting. I just want to be certain that people know that this is not a game for the light at heart. I mean, there are people with, that have issues in their life, that have dealt with things in their lives that they have to really, I know I'm trying to be very careful and not spoiling, that they need to be aware of before they let their 13-year-old and above. This game is rated for 13 and above. It does ask you that initially in the game. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying, I mean, in to Patrick's point, you're right. If parents, if you're not kind of keeping out on your 13 or 14-year-old kid, what they're playing and what they're downloading and stuff like that, that's on you. And we're just trying to give you that fair warning. But back to what you asked, Shane. It was well written. I mean, what's the best way to say it? I was kind of like waiting the whole time for the cake to be done, and I'm waiting for the timer to go off, and it seems like the timer is never going to go off. And then when it comes out, it's the best cake I've ever had. So even though it was something that threw me for a loop, it was like, oh man, that was so shocking, or so unready for that only good writing, or at least good timing through the way that formatted, that it did that. So yes, on those ways it did that, and it hit you at times when you were you weren't really expecting it, and then it hits you at times when you knew it was coming, but it came so vigorously at you. Or so I don't know how to put it without spoiling it, but it came so like in your face that it was like, oh my gosh, like. So yeah, I don't know that I kind of want to take a step back and say it's not like I hate the game. It's just it's a one playthrough for me, and it's like a good book. It's like The Shining. I've read The Shining one time. I'm not reading it again. That book stays in the back closet, and I've got it, covered with rosary beads. But and all that's a bad joke. But anyway. To answer your question, yes, it did fulfill or it did do those things that I just said. Yeah.
Well, and you have to understand something. The game comes with a warning before you can play it.
Yes.
It says that there is, it's basically a content warning. You can even turn on like content warning during the game so that they'll give you a pop-up right before something bad's about to happen. And it's also got, you can say, okay, I want to turn on the content filter, or you could say you want a spoiler version of looking at what's in the game that's considered so horrific or triggering. Because in my opinion, I don't think this is a horror game. It's a psychological game. It screws with your mind big time, but it's not a horror game, but it's put in the psychological horror genre. But yeah, like I said, the game has a warning in the very beginning of it talking about, there is content warning. Do you want to see the spoiler version of it, or are you okay with this? Or like I said, there's even an option to give you a pop-up warning right before you're about to see something that could be detrimental to your health, because it does deal with like some pretty heavy topics that I think a lot of kids have to put up with at that age, in high school and stuff like that. Because that's where I heard about a lot of the themes that happen in this game is where you find out in high school. You got different things like that. So it's got a warning, so that should tell you something right there. I think a lot of parents are saying that this is a 16 plus game and not necessarily a 13 plus. Just because of just because of the themes in it. I think if your kid can tell the difference between a game and whatever and isn't too sensitive, that might be a call for an adult. But I would say 13 is probably the starting point at the very minimum that you should ever let your kid look at this.
I definitely agree with that. My daughter, she had watched videos of it. She's one of those kids who watches games, doesn't play them as much. So she already knew the gist of it. But she still sat there and watched the whole thing. And the game is not for us, it is a one and done of enjoyment, and that's perfectly fine. But the game is not that simple. There is more to do. You don't think about it. And the way the game gets you to play more is brilliant. It really is. The thought process they put into this game is just wow, really. I mean, I think Nick had to Google something. I about lost my freaking mind trying to figure out. And I think Pat was in the same boat. But once you do, it's like, oh my God, that's so cool. There's just so many brilliant and unique concepts in this game. It was fantastic. One of my favorite things about the game, though, is the characters. It's just they're so well created that every character is unique, even if they're a little bit trope when you first meet them. It goes beyond that as you play. That was, my characters were absolutely my favorite thing. Nick, what was your thought when you played through? Were you like just completely taken off guard because you read a little bit into the game when we first kind of talked about it? Were you still kind of like, holy crap?
Just Monika. Yes, yes, I was. I mean, I read a little bit about what the game was in a sense, but not the spoilers or anything like that. So. Yeah, I was taken aback about, the things that happened. And, once the first hour or so of the game is kind of just straightforward and you don't really think about it. And you're just like, okay, we're just kind of talking about certain things and whatever. And then, the second act, I guess you could say, of the game really just takes a turn. And from there on, you're hooked. I mean, I was hooked. I was up late. I was like, oh, I got to stop playing this game. I got to go to bed because I got to work tomorrow. That was pretty much it for me. And then I ended up finishing it soon after that. But yeah, I mean, it's a great game. It's got a lot of twists and turns. It's not what you think it is. So, if you're on the fence of buying this game, I definitely recommend it. But for those that have played Doki Doki in the past, I just want to get this in there real quick. If you think about what does Doki Doki Plus have to offer, basically, of course, HD visuals, which there's not really, I mean, probably a little bit of clarification on the visuals and stuff like that. But basically, 6 new side stories, 13 additional music tracks, and 100 plus unlockable images. So it has a lot more images, tracks, side stories, stuff like that. There's also, I believe, the original PC version did not have the, because you're on a PC, they didn't have the console interface that this one has. This one has kind of like a console PC interface that you can interact with to play Doki Doki and look at the pictures and various things like that. So this Doki Doki Plus just adds all that stuff in there. And I also think because I've watched a playthrough of the PC version, I also think it changes up some of the story elements. Not really the story as a whole, but just kind of like the kind of the way, the flow and kind of the different things that happen, throughout there to kind of make it more streamlined, I guess, in a sense.
Like a director's cut kind of a deal where they change it up just enough.
Yeah, kind of. But I mean, they change it for the better, right? They kind of make more sense of things and kind of, certain things that seem kind of left field in the original might be a little bit more streamlined in this version. So it kind of makes more sense. Right. But other than that, even the original makes sense, but they just kind of like tweaked a few things to kind of streamline things. So, but yeah, right. Awesome game.
And they had to add that console into the game because the game was originally on PC, as you said, and they had to have some way for players to interact with the file structure, if you will, because you can't do that on a console, right? You're not going to go open up the C drive of a console and start flipping through files because that's part of the meta that you'll get into when you play the game. So they had to add something so the console player could interact with basically the OS level. So it's kind of a fake computer dashboard, if you will, but they call it the console. So it's kind of a cool way they did that, because I was wondering when they were talking about coming out on console with this, I was like, how are they going to do file manipulations and stupid stuff they did in the original game and stuff? So, and this is how they did it, so there's so much. The game has 2 hours to get through the story, but in my opinion, one playthrough will not do this game justice because there's so many different ways to play the game. And then there's so many different things you need to interact with at the meta level, as Nick was saying, to basically figure out the story. You're not going to figure out the story if all you do is just play the game, watch those, and then the game ends. You're going to be like, what the hell just happened at the end of the game? And, so I recommend playing through at least twice and then using the file interactor when you can in the second playthrough, just so you can get the full breadth of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Pat, same question to you. Start to end, were you like, shit?
I mean, I was bored with it, to be perfectly honest with you, until Act 2, till the end of Act 1, I should say. Because the end of Act 1, I was like, what the crap? And then I'm like, what's going to happen next? And then you started up Act 2, and I'm like, what is going on here? So, and then it just keeps more and more of that crap keeps happening. And then the little side stories, oh my God, the side stories added so much more context to what's going on, because some of the time you go, how do these girls know each other and what the heck is going on here? And then you figure it out in the side stories. The side stories aren't interactive. They're just reading. So you can play through them once and that's all you need, because they're not interactive. They just add context to the story. So definitely cool thing right there with those side things are. That's the only bad thing about the side stories is they're not interactable. It's just reading and follow along, but it gives you backstory on each of the girls.
And it's well written too, just like the main game. So you really get that understanding of the characters and everything. And that's, like I said, that's my favorite part of the game. The characters are just fantastic. The game really does come just out of nowhere. Like you said, Pat, the first couple hours, like, I was kind of the same way. And then boom, it's like, it got you by the balls the entire time, and it just dragging you through this amazing story. And I just loved it. One thing I would like to have had though with the side stories of what we just talked about is I would rather have had them do voice acting on, give it more of an anime feel. But that's really my only big complaint about the game, because in my head, like I said, when I'm reading all this, I hear each character in my head. I mean, I know who each character should be voiced by, and that's because it's so well written.
Well, I think that might take away from some of it, though. If you think about it, there's a whole lot of stuff that if it was all voiced over, it would just be sequence after sequence after sequence, because there's times where you're just kind of, I don't want to give anything away, but you're just sitting there and you're like, weird shit is happening. But if they're just talking constantly, you're probably not paying attention to a lot of what's going on around. And the story just may progress because you're like, she stopped talking, I'm going to hit A or X or whatever to continue it. Whereas when you're reading it, sometimes when you're reading it, you may be a little bit slower than what they would talk. You got to reread that. And you're like, did something just happen over there? So I think that voicing over may take away from some of it.
No, that is true, because as you play through the game, not to give anything away, but pay attention as you play the game. Just pay attention. And it's just such a damn good game. I was really, really happy and surprised. I mean, was it worth, I believe we paid $15 for it. Hell yeah, it was worth it. I would have paid $30 for this game easily. Probably not more, but I think with the pleasure I got from this game, the talking, shut up, Pat, with the talking we've had about this game, it was worth it because it's just such a good game.
I'm sure the pleasure you got from this game, Shane, I'm sure of it. Shane likes feeding Yuri chocolates, that's all I got to say.
No.
But yeah, Russ, I mean, really, you're the outlier here, but I mean, I was in the same boat as Nick. I was staying up late trying to get this. I'm like, I just got to see what happened next. And then I would get back to my house. I'm like, well, I just got to see what happens next. Let's see what happens next. That's what happened to me. What about you? I mean, it doesn't sound like you had that kind of experience that we did.
No, I mean, I didn't have quite that experience, but it definitely, I mean, the $15 price point, it's reasonable because you would pay that for a good book, right? You would pay $15 for a good book. I mean, I agree. I mean, I guess when I first started off with the discussion, like I said, with Shane kind of surprised me being picked first. I want to say that I just want people to be careful with it. I mean, I don't know that I call it a game really. Like, it's interactive experience. It's not really a game to me. So maybe that's where I kind of like draw that line. It's more of an interactive experience versus a game. And it's definitely at $15. I mean, my goodness. I mean, some of my favorite choose your own adventure books were $15, but I mean, although well, I'm not going to say that because that'll spoil something.
I think what you're missing though is, did you do any of the meta part of the game? Like, did you do anything with the?
I did the second run through, and I did some of those things that we have discussed, and I saw how it changed part of it, and it was intriguing. But at that point, I felt like that was where the choose your own adventure kind of thing kind of comes into play. You're still going to get the same kind of outcomes. It's the same kind of experience, but it's a variation of that. Oh gosh, I am so sorry, listeners. As you're hearing this, we're trying our best not to spoil anything. And so we're talking extremely vaguely.
Yeah. Right, This is a game you really, you have to discuss all the way, or you have a real hard time, avoiding anything that's going to take something from the experience away.
Right. You need to play with friends too, because it's so much fun just to be like, did you get to a part yet? And they're like, It's so cryptic. And you're like, what do you mean? Did you get to the part yet? Oh, you haven't gotten there. You'll know when you get there. And I'm like,
that's what it was when Nick, hey, did you get to that? And didn't know because I hadn't got to it. But when I got to it, I knew exactly what was meant by did you get to it? Right. No, that was you, Pat. That was actually you that asked that. So,
Well, after Nick had already beat it, and then he was very tight-lipped about the whole thing. I don't know why. He wasn't like rubbing it in or anything. And then I got through it, and I'm like, what? Why didn't you warn me, Nick? Why didn't you egg me on? But then, we all beat it, and then Nick passed around the theory craft, and I'm like, holy crap.
Yep. Yeah, there's a really interesting video that Nick shared with us. And I didn't watch it at first because typically I just don't watch these things, but it's really intriguing. So when you beat the game and you do everything you can, then you got to watch this video. Nick, you should put it in a link or something, but it's interesting. And honestly, this is one of my favorite stories this year of any game that we've played. As far as just story, not gameplay or anything, but characters and story, other things, is one of my favorites so far, by far.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I think I really enjoyed it, and I played through multiple times as well as Nick has and Jane has. Russ sounds like you got one playthrough in it. I couldn't wait to play it again after I played it the first time because I'm like, now that I know these little secrets, what happens if I do this and I did this and I got a bad ending, and I'm like, oh crap, let me go ahead and try to, because it's really weird. I don't know how to explain it. When you look at it, you're like, this is a dating sim. Why do I want to play a dating sim game? I'm not after some lollies or anything like that. I'm just not into that.